Welcome back, Focus learners, to another explainer. Today, we are unraveling an absolutely fascinating biological spy thriller. We're looking at a microorganism that is so highly evolved, it might literally be pulling the strings of mammalian behavior across the entire globe. We are talking about Toxoplasma gondii. Okay, let's dive into this. Could a microscopic parasite, one that completely relies on your household cat, be quietly altering your mind? I know, it sounds like pure science fiction, doesn't it? But as you're about to see, the science behind this is very real, incredibly complex, and deeply embedded right in our everyday world. Section 1. The perfect parasite. To truly wrap our heads around Toxoplasma, we really have to look at it as a marvel of evolutionary engineering. I mean, for decades, this thing existed in total obscurity. It was first discovered way back in 1908 in Tunisia, hiding inside a nondescript, hamster-like rodent called a gondii. And actually, at almost the exact same time, researchers found it in a rabbit in Brazil. But it wasn't until the 1930s that it was officially recognized as a rare but serious pathogen in newborns. And it took all the way until the 1950s for scientists to finally map out its incredibly complicated life cycle. The parasite's name actually tells you exactly what it looks like. It's derived from the Greek word toxon, meaning arc or bow, and plasma, meaning shape. So it's this incredibly tiny bow-shaped creature, closely related to the parasite that causes malaria, by the way, and it completely thrives by sneaking into and living entirely inside the cells of the animals it infects. Section 2. The feline connection. And this brilliantly illustrates the parasite's ultimate goal. See, while this tiny invader can infect practically any warm-blooded animal on Earth, it has a very specific preference for reproduction. Toxoplasma can only undergo sexual reproduction inside the lining of a cat's small intestine. And we're talking any cat, from your household tabby right up to a wild lion. So the parasite mates, forms a round oocyst, and gets excreted. When a foraging animal accidentally ingests it, the parasite kicks off Plan B. Tiny, slithering sporozoites hatch from the cyst, wriggle through the tissues, and force their way inside the host's cells to start cloning themselves asexually. Section 3. Invading the human body. So what happens when a human accidentally becomes the host? Well, inside us, this microscopic spy takes on two distinct forms. First, it becomes what we call tachyzoites. That's from the Greek touches, meaning swift. These guys are active, they multiply fast, and they are destructive. They literally burst out of cells and stream through the bloodstream. But to survive our immune system, they eventually have to convert into bradyzoites, brady meaning slow. They push into our cells, stealing a little bit of the cell membrane with them to form this tough protective shield called a parasitophorous vacuole. Inside this little cocoon, they form a cyst, and they hibernate. Now, for healthy adults, the immune system usually forces the parasite into that slow, hibernating stage pretty quickly. But for vulnerable populations, those swift tachyzoites can be absolutely devastating. For instance, if a woman is infected for the very first time during her first or second trimester, the parasite can cross the placenta. This can cause really severe outcomes for the fetus, like chorioretinitis, which blurs vision, or even epilepsy. Similarly, for HIV/AIDS patients who don't have enough CD4 lymphocytes to fight back, the immune system just can't contain it. The parasite runs wild, causing severe and sadly often fatal brain and heart issues. Section 4. Hacking the immune system. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the massive plot twist it introduces. Most pathogens, right, they try to hide from our immune system. Toxoplasma does the exact opposite. It relies on sheer mechanical genius. The parasite intentionally manufactures a protein called GR24. This protein travels straight into the host cell's DNA and binds to a specific receptor called P38MAPK. And why does it do this? To forcibly unlock the host's genes and stimulate the production of interleukin-12. It is intentionally setting off the alarm, triggering our own macrophages and T helper lymphocytes to come and attack it. You're probably wondering, why on earth would it trigger an attack on itself? Well, it's because, as this quote summarizes so perfectly, a good parasite doesn't want to kill its host. Toxoplasma knows that if it kills us, it dies too. By stimulating our immune system, it essentially forces itself to be contained into that dormant, harmless bradyzoite cyst stage. It keeps us alive, just hoping we will eventually be eaten by a cat, thereby fulfilling its ultimate evolutionary destiny. We aren't the target here. We're just an accidental waiting room. Section 5. Mind control and dopamine. And this brings us to the most provocative part of our explainer, what exactly happens while these cysts are just, hibernating inside a host's brain? To really grasp the sheer scale of this, roughly 33% of the global human population currently carries Toxoplasma cysts. That is 1 out of every 3 people walking the earth right now, acting as an accidental long-term host. So with numbers like that, we have to ask the question, if a third of the world has a parasite encysted in their brain tissues, is Toxoplasma actually influencing human behavior? The answer to that starts with neurochemistry. As it turns out, those hibernating brachiozoites aren't entirely asleep after all. They metabolize at a very slow rate. And amazingly, Toxoplasma possesses 2 distinct genes that specifically code for the formation of dopamine. Now, dopamine is a crucial neurotransmitter in the mammalian brain. It regulates movement, learning, sleep, attention, and mood. And this tiny parasite is actively manufacturing it right inside the host's brain. We know exactly what this dopamine hacking does to mice. Uninfected mice are terrified of cats. Even the mere scent of cat urine sends them running for the hills. But when a mouse is infected with Toxoplasma cysts, it completely loses its innate fear. In lab experiments, infected mice actually prefer the scent of cat urine. The parasite alters their behavior so much that they willingly risk their lives. They essentially offer themselves up to a cat on a silver platter, perfectly completing the parasite's life cycle. Let's move to and see how this builds into human psychology. Obviously, we aren't natural prey for house cats anymore, but Dr. Jaroslav Fleger in the Czech Republic postulates that the parasite is still applying these subtle psychological nudges to human brains. Studies have actually linked Toxoplasma infection to delayed reaction times and increased recklessness behind the wheel. Curiously enough, infected men have scored significantly higher on physical attraction ratings in surveys. And on a much more serious note, research has shown that people genetically predisposed to schizophrenia often develop more severe cases if they are also carrying Toxoplasma cysts. Section 6. Living with Toxoplasma. With all this crazy biological hacking going on, how do we handle such a wildly successful pathogen in modern medicine? For decades, doctors have relied on diagnoses like the Sabin-Feldman dye test, which was developed way back in the late 1940s. Basically, by exposing living tachyzoites to a patient's blood serum and adding a little methylene blue dye, doctors can see if the patient has produced antibodies against the parasite. But here's the catch. While blood tests can absolutely tell us if you've been exposed, they cannot tell us if the organism is currently hanging out in your brain or how many of those cysts are hiding up there. And here is the stark reality of modern medicine. There is currently no effective cure for toxoplasmosis once it enters that encysted, hibernating brachiozoid stage. Once it sets up its little protective cocoon in your tissues, it is there to stay. Even if we definitively prove it worsens conditions like schizophrenia, we currently have virtually no ability to remove it. Which leaves us with this final, incredibly profound thought to consider. Toxoplasma gondii is a masterpiece of evolution. It has survived for millions of years by perfectly balancing its existence within our immune systems and our neurochemistry. If a third of humanity shares their brain with this microscopic puppeteer, a parasite that actively manufactures dopamine to nudge our behavior, we really have to wonder how much of our culture, our recklessness, and our daily choices are actually our own. It's a fascinating question and, for sure, one that guarantees scientists will be studying this microscopic mastermind for decades to come. Thanks for joining us for this explainer, and we'll see you next time.